Nina.
Take it down, bud. Thank you.
Yeah, we could have more than we have. I think we have. It turns out the puzzle's much bigger also than what we think it is. Maybe not.
Hi. What is on? What is that? Yeah. We have more family members or what? Huh?
They are the glue.
Yeah. It's so nice to have a chair. It's just good. I like it.
built on horizontalism and horizontal structures as far as like and being like a leaderless movement and an open, participatory, democratic movement. It really attracted to people a lot of ideologies that were against hierarchy. So fun fact for fun.
Yes. Well, I don't know how much you want to keep going, and then I have a few questions or comments. I was interested in the email and post the stairwell, send it out or whatever, send the different types of anarchism, like the socialist model, because it seems to me that without the solidarity part, it looks a lot like libertarianism. And I'm also interested in destruction. What is destruction? Because I think sort of flounder around that.
Yeah, totally. I had like a really good quote about that I'm trying to find. You wanna pick up another one and we can talk about that and I'll find it and we'll come back to it? Okay, go for it, yeah.
What I know, there's like a few different some of them are market-based, so like after being occupied, how long have you been here now? 9 months or 8 months?
I think 11.
for a while.
It's 11 now.
Okay, for a while. After being here for a while, the kind of anarchism that I see here. Well, first off, first thing I wanted to mention was I think definitions are important so that we actually know what we're talking about when we talk to each other. And I think that's some of what Julie was saying. The kind of anarchism I see as occupied and frankly what I find really comfortable is the kind of anarchy that I understand that humans lived with 40,000 years ago. And what's so different about that is 40,000 years ago, what got people up in the morning was not how much stuff they were going to have at the end of the day.
Yeah, I don't know if you can.
It was how much they could contribute rather than how much they could take. And that's what I really find wonderful about what I have experienced within Occupy. I personally, from a standpoint we're talking about here, I'm a socialist. And once again, the definitions are so darn important. When I read Marx, I read about phases of smashing the corporate state, creating a socialist state that protects us from the 1% money back, and then that socialist state little by little fading away into what we're calling anarchy here. So what I'm trying to present here is, in my view, the kind of anarchy that we're talking about at Occupy and what Marx was talking about. The final goals are exactly the same. There's a little bit differences on how to get there, and both of those differences, in my view, have real threats. Both of them have dangers, but they're not as dangerous as we realize what those dangers are. But the kind of socialism I'm seeing is a very cooperative socialism. I'm sorry, the kind of anarchism I'm seeing in an Occupy is a very cooperative anarchism, not something where we are free to grab as much shit as we can for ourselves and screw everybody else, but rather where we're free to create the kind of world we really want.
Cheryl can hear. Cheryl's watching, she can hear.
I think the main difference between like all Marxist class and the socialist class is that
We still can hear.
The closer,
whereas most socialist class
Yeah, I can can't even hear.
goes towards seizing the state and becoming the state, and then progressing towards a more utopian.
Maybe I can sit in the bottom step there.
You know, a good example is what is happening in Mexico. It's like, forget about having a war with the states, forget about trying to take state power, build a non-hierarchical system based on community and based on consensus outside of that, and defend that.
If I could just respond real quick. When I read Marx and Lenin, for that matter, I don't hear about them seizing the state. To me, both the anarchists and the Marxists want to crush the state, but the Marxists are talking about replacing it with a socialist state to protect it from the reemergence of 1%, where the anarchists are talking about going right from the smashed capitalist state right into a state of anarchy. Both of them want to, from my understanding, want to smash it. I didn't mean to get off on a tangent. I just wanted to respond.
I mean, I think like a lot about anarchy is also about like self-management and self-governance. Because anarchy doesn't mean that there's no government. It just means that that it's self-government. You don't have like this hierarchical group of people making decisions for you in your everyday life. Because what's happening right now, there's all these, there's these people that are like really far, like people you don't actually see on an everyday basis. You don't actually have any sort of like contact with them making decisions. And within, and as Alex pointed out earlier, is that there's different ways of organizing this. And one of the ways is anarcho-syndicalism, which talks a lot about organizing, having workers organize their work and their sites of production. And so instead of there having been, so that's one way that the workers will be organizing together to run their, run the factories or run whatever place, like schools or whatnot. And so I think it's a lot about like forming these affinity groups, which in each community, which would be able to coordinate different parts of our society, and just ensuring that it's again it's non-hierarchical and not authoritarian. I think is the most important part. But I think in the end, like different communities can come to different decisions about like how they would self-govern their own community. So like for example, if like the people from downtown LA decide to come together and figure out how to run, they would be the ones to decide like how what downtown LA looks like, and it'll be the decision of that community. If another community wants to like run things differently, they can do that as well. So like, and then that's where the whole federation thing comes from, because then it's like, well, it's this loosely federated voluntary association of all these different communities living, how they choose to live. And as long as no one group oppresses the other, like that's kind of the goal. And just really quickly, I wanted to read this quote from Chomsky. If we have institutions which make greed the sole property of human beings and encourage pure greed at the expense of other human emotions and commitments, we're going to have a society based on greed, with all that follows. A different society might be organized in such a way that human feelings and emotions of other sorts, say solidarity, support, sympathy, become dominant. Then you have different aspects of human nature and personality revealing themselves. So if we actually, that's why like anarchy is not just about like smashing like the political and economic imperatives. It's also about the culture, because that's a lot of these institutions create our culture, and right now our culture is extremely like, it is about greed, it's about exploitation, it's about oppression, and we need to start changing that in order to live in a society that's actually better. I think, did you have your hand up?
Yeah. You were talking about the market, right? You mentioned something about the market. Sorry. Somebody was mentioning about they control the market system. You know what I mean? That is so true. I mean, I don't know why we don't just like collectively. I see a lot of great people here, and we can create our own market base. You know what I mean? Like a parallel market. Just like in the e-commerce. You know what I mean? Just start basically making our own superstores, basically. You know what I mean? Controlled by us, because just go out there and show people how to do it. Because you already know how. You've been sitting here learning about it. Come on, just basically now this is a movement. Just let's go show what we can do. Take over the e-commerce. Basically build a parallel economy. Basically, we could do it. We did this.
think the idea that moved the Occupy at the beginning was that we want to be frontal, we want to be open, you know, we want to include everybody in their idea. That was the main idea of the Occupy. That's what the away, that's necessity the human has to have the free expression. That's what we at the beginning everybody say, okay, Occupy is the way to go. And you have to realize that the complexity of society that we have now is not like 100 years ago. You know, we've been growing exponentially in the last 100 years, from 1 billion years to 1 billion people, for most of the time, to 7.5 billion that we have. Tremendous complexity. And we have to take in account that complexity in order for us to grow as a movement. The idea is the democracy. Democracy, even when it's being used by the system that we have now, but when you bear close examination of this, democracy is the expression of the majorities, you know, which is service to the majority, and those people who represent us are supposed to represent us. That's the true democracy, and that's the idea that most of the people can follow. You have to remember, when we have the society complexity that we have now, we need to have some kind of structure in which we can grow it, because it's not simple like many different branches of the knowledge, human knowledge, have advanced exponentially. We need some control of it. I think the best way that we can do this is focus by the democracy. Most of the people understand, and we avoid the conflicting. You know, most of the things that we don't grow in the United States, we grow with confliction all the time. Ideology. You know, I am Marxist, I am communist, I am socialist, I am anarchist. So we always conflict each other, and we never achieve anything. The Occupy opened the table for everybody to be expressed, you know, without the ideology. So we don't have to go behind this thing ideology, because destroy the moment. Definitely. So embrace something that we start and the people like it.
I feel like this comes right back to what Carol started when talking about structure, how anarchy doesn't have structure, and the next one is about, we're going to differentiating between anti-government and anti-state. Government is not state, and we're going to talk about that, because I think that's where a lot of misunderstandings of, like, we need to rely on the government because they serve us type of false illusions that we have, and I think that's what prevents people from, like, exploring anarchistic ideals, which to me isn't a political ideology at all. It's more of a practice and a philosophy. And like, there's a passage that I want to share with all of you later. But yeah, we need to. I think anarchy allows us to create our own structure with the people we want to organize with, and create whatever structure that works best for whatever project that is. And that leaves an option, like, open to anything, basically. Like, we don't have to work within this, like, already created structure and just follow their rules. We don't have to vote. We don't have to, we're just, like, trapped in the system that's so dependent on the state and the government that, like, we can't even perceive that we're possible. Like, we can actually create stuff by organizing a community, and I think anarchism
Can you just get back, maybe?
philosophies allow human beings to do that and create our own structure. Yeah.
Can you move back a little?
I'm wondering what the difference, what you just described sounds like pragmatism.
Thank you.
It sounds like not depending on any particular philosophy, but finding what works, provides the greatest benefit. And it's very closely allied to learning, education. So it's like this idea of walking the road, we find where we're going. It's very process-oriented. And what is structure but process that has become habitual?
about there not being any sort of government. And there's a difference between the government and the state, and I want to make that distinction because there's this there's this government, and government is also about how we sort of manage our communities and our societies, and then there's the state, which is an institution that manages our communities. So I think that's kind of different. So anarchy is not about being anti-government, and it's anarchy. What it actually means, it means like without a ruler. It means without authority. And it attacks the main sources of power and capitalism, law, authority, and the state. So it's really not about government. It's a lot more about being anti-authority. And I think there's a distinction to be sad about they're not saying like, oh, there's no system of governance. Well, no, there is going to be some sort of system of governance, some sort of like way to self-govern, self-manage. And again, that can kind of come off in different ways. And I think like Occupy LA, as you mentioned before, it is a very much of an anarchist based group. And we do have a way where we self-govern. We have meetings, we talk, we discuss things, figure out what steps to take. But there is there's no like state, there's nobody telling you what to do, which can at times like everyone be like be a downfall. But most of the time, like it's actually something that's really great because people do what they want to do because they're compelled to do so out of their own wanting to do it versus being forced into it by some higher authority, and it actually makes better, happier human beings. It's improving like hierarchy, like our hierarchy society right now really doesn't work. It creates all of this really like lots of like sadness and misery, and that's not something beneficial for humanity.
I feel as far as like definitions go, and as far as like the actual definition of what a government is, it comes from like government. When you break the Latin terminology down, it means power over the mind. So I would have to disagree that like anarchy is against government, but not against the idea of governing oneself, governing like a community. And as far as like as far as having a structure that does kind of like it's just a way to live without the coercion and without the authority of the government. It's like a direct opposition to that. And it was touching up on the subject of democracy, and I would have to say that democracy in this country has been extremely kind of taken advantage of. There was this representative democracy that was formed that like it's a way of people to represent you, and it's like that's also like it's like anarchism. Is it something that like one person can represent every single person that's here, or one person can represent a group of people? It's no representation whatsoever. I can represent myself, she can represent herself. It's like it's decentralizing the power of its actual government. So I would say that anarchy it's like it's living with true liberty without the coercion of government and social systems that were born into and have been
Can I just add to that real quick? The alternative to representative democracy obviously is direct democracy, but if we're talking about a federated system eventually, then you can't have delegational democracy. I mean, like we'd have our local groups, we'd have a group like Occupy LA, but then, on a wider state level in California, that we'd send delegates from this group to bigger conferences and to a more federated system. They would ideally be rotated out every few months so that people didn't become professional politicians. We weren't always being represented by the same 2 or 3 people, but that's the alternative. No one thinks there is an alternative to representative democracy, but it's direct and delegational.
I mean, I think it's also that we shouldn't necessarily like consider like the way we'd be federated like along the same lines that we are now. I don't know if it would be like be California if like United, we all were anarchists. And so, and I mean, I think that's also like, I think that smaller is better. I don't think we necessarily have to have these like links with like people like, I mean, I think it'd be great if you want to be a, traveler, you want to go travel along, the land, that's great, but like, I don't know if we necessarily, but have to be in contact and have like these huge, like, conventions. I mean, a lot of these conventions even now are really like, they don't really do very much because it's like you have all these people from all these different parts, like how, so I think maybe by necessity, if you like need something from like up north, then maybe like, you can send some people over there and figure it out. But like, I don't think we necessarily would have to have these like, these meetings, and it could be more like along the lines of what we do with like Interoccupy now, like we do go meet and talk with other occupations. And we don't have like these huge like state ones, but we have ones within like local like Southern California, and like I think that works, pretty well. And I think people like definitely learn from each other at these Interoccupy events, but I don't think, I don't know if any decisions necessarily ever need to be made at this like other higher level, or not higher, but like this other like, larger grouping of people.
I heard something about the state of the education. We don't need that much that we have now. I think that concept is totally wrong. We are humans and we understand many things that we never understood before, and it's because of the knowledge. And I dealing with students, in the room, and definitely we need some guidelines. We cannot let the students let's go. No, we have the complexity of the knowledge that we have now, and we've been growing because of that knowledge. We understand so many things now, and it's more needed to go forward to dealing with the 7.5 billion people that we have in the planet. With all the problems that we create, these people, we need knowledge. We need a massive amount of knowledge. We need control of that knowledge. The other way happened when we have the nuclear weapons, how they use it now. But that is powerful knowledge we use for the good too. And you have to remember, democracy is not a concept that comes from the air. It's not a group that's going to say, no, democracy was invented 2,500 years by the Greeks over there. And when they did that democracy, they advanced over any other country at the time. This group of 30,000 in Greece, they were able to have so many ideas that we still have. Democracy is one of the ideas that we have now. On them, on the past. And they gave us so much knowledge. We have Socrates, we have Archimedes, we have Pythagoras theory that we still using for development only the democracy that overpowered all these systems that we have at the time. So democracy is not idea that is come, I'm going to do the thing. It's not as simple, the society that we have, and a little group, we're going to take, we're going to do whatever we want. We haven't evolved as a human to the point that we're going to govern ourselves. We need to evolve. We're going that way. But we need to go step by step to understand the relation that we have with the species, the relation that we have with the planet. That's what we need to grow as a human. In the moment that we have now, we don't even get the majority of the people come to us over here. The people are still voting against their own interest, because of the propaganda. We need to grow as a human. And that is lawful. That's called evolution. We have to go like this. It's not that one group is going to invent, that's it. That is the form of government. The society is much complex than we live.
I think anarchism kind of goes beyond direct democracy because it has initiation of force theory and non-aggression theory, which basically says it doesn't really matter what the majority says, as they can't initiate force. I don't care if the majority of people want to blow those group of people out. That's not cool. That's not anarchism, and I would never support democracy just for that reason, because I don't think majority should rule. And about education, I totally agree. People should need to be educated, but I don't think there needs to be strict guidelines. And I think people learn way better when they're not taught what to learn and taught to learn. I think people, if they learn because they want to and not because they have to, I think the technology will advance to the better. I think our technology will be made to better serve all human beings instead of how it is right now, where it better serves a very small percentage of the population. And I mean, personally, I used to be anti-technology, but now I'm very pro-technology. I just think that if like I just said, if technology was made to better the lives of every person rather than the lives of a very small percentage of the population, that would be good. And yeah, like I said, I think anarchism is just non-initiation of force theory and non-aggression theory, where you don't initiate force, you can defend yourself, but you can't initiate force.
Julie? Yeah, I'm kind of of the mind that Ed is right, that, the idea being that we need to learn how to govern ourselves, that we're learning that here, we're modeling it, using a model of anarchy. But to me, there's two parts to anarchism. There's the anarchism that says, what happens when we live in a world that's an anarchist world? We have anarchism, and what's going on now, we're at a tension there. So we can be totally against their use of force, but they're using force. And what we can do to stop that from happening. And that's where we have to be organized. And I see that we need to get more, I'm not saying it can't happen in anarchism, but I think we need to get more organized. So I just want to give a concrete example. There are women who are Muslim that are being hurt by men. And we're not doing enough about it. We need to apply our model to doing something about it. If we can create a structure, let's do it, because right now our movement's going to fall apart if we don't.
So I wanted to recently touch upon the democracy issue. So our forebears overthrew kings and dictators, but they didn't abolish institutions. But they didn't abolish institutions by which kings and dictators ruled. They democratized them. Yet whoever operates these institutions, whether it's a king, a president, or an electorate, the experience on the receiving end is roughly the same. Laws, bureaucracy, and the police came before democracy. They function the same way in a democracy as in a dictatorship. The only difference is that because we can cast ballots and how they should be applied, we're supposed to regard them as ours even when they're used against us. Democracy presumes a line between participants and outsiders, between legitimate and illegitimate. Only a fraction of the men could vote in ancient Athens. The founding fathers owned slaves. Citizenship still imposes a barrier, included and excluded, shutting over 10 million undocumented residents out of the decisions that shape their lives. The liberal answer is to expand the lines of inclusion, extending the rights and privileges until everyone is integrated into one vast democratic project. But as long as all power must flow through one bottleneck, there are bound to be imbalances and outsiders. The alternative would be anarchy, abolishing centralized power structures and all the borders they impose. Without borders, people would only live and work together of their own free will, flowing freely between communities without top-down control.